Hello kids, it's me again, back with another video. I've made 2 videos now, sort of reckoning with the harmful media I engaged with in the past. One about H3H3 Productions, Calvin Guerra, and Gamergate in general, and one about LOL cow culture, both of which I highly recommend you watch because I just think they're good. And they give you an idea of the kind of person I was in my late teens. In my anti-SJW phase video, I mentioned the YouTuber idubbbz in passing, as also far too comfortable with idubbbz's strange fixation with the N-word. Yeah, when I said in passing, I meant literally one sentence. But ever since I wrote the script for that video in January of this year, it did get me to thinking. idubbbz did have a strange obsession with the N-word, and as a fan of his during his peak, I was strangely okay with it. Obviously, I'm not anymore. I mean, have you seen the title of this video? But now, Ian has made an apology video, which I didn't watch until like yesterday. I saw the video in my sub box and just kinda moved on. I knew whatever it was about was probably going to rub 2016 idubbbz enjoyers the wrong way, and I'm more aware of just how, let's say, weird idubbbz fans can be. Take the whole OnlyFans situation for an example. Some time ago, Ian's at-the-time girlfriend, Anissa, made an OnlyFans. All the girlies were doing it, so to me it wasn't that big of a deal. She was getting her coin, making a bag perhaps, and maybe having a little bit of fun in the process. But idubbbz fans were mad about it, like it personally affected them or something. Something that Ian got called a lot was a cuck. Apparently, these people, let's face it, men, thought it was the worst form of disrespect for a man's girlfriend to consensually show her body off on the internet for money. I could break into their house, slap their mom, and steal their entire supply of Mountain Dew Code Red, and they wouldn't hate me as much as I hated Anissa for, hold on, let me check my notes, doing what she wanted to. And as Ian pointed out in his apology video, that was kind of the catalyst for him reckoning with his past behavior. These were his fans saying this, after all. What Ian was apologizing for in his video were his content cops, especially the one about Tana, and him playing fast and loose with the use of slurs in his videos. He encouraged the use of slurs to take their power away, and his fans gobbled it up. I distinctly remember binge watching his unboxing videos, and as time went on, more and more packages showed up to Ian's P.O. box where the name and the delivery address was literally just the N-word or the N-word and the F slur. This is what his fans, the ones who went out of their way to purchase items or write letters and pay for postage for it to be sent to him, referred to him as. Endearingly. And this may shock you, but people who are willing to be openly racist are also willing to be openly misogynist, because the only way one could think that making an OnlyFans is an open act of disrespect towards one's male partner is if they also thought women were property. I didn't know this until recently, but when Anissa and Ian got married, Ian chose to take her last name. I was gonna say maybe he had a reason for it, but do you really need a reason to change your name other than wanting to? And let me tell you, people were extremely normal about it. Personally, I wouldn't change my name if I got married because I've had it my whole life and I don't intend on relinquishing it. Names mean a lot after all. But judging from the comments on my LOL cow culture video, I'm just a pesky SJW without the dyed hair, so my opinions are immediately invalid. Or something. By then though, Ian had already been face to face with the consequences of his own actions. In his video, he tells a story about meeting a trans fan.
One year I was at a convention and a bunch of fans were, wanting pictures, and this particular fan came up to me and said, I know you probably don't like transgender people, but can I, get a picture? That smacked me in the face. I was like, oh, holy shit. Why would you think that? And
that just sounds heartbreaking. Imagine meeting someone who admires you but thinks you hate them when in reality you don't. Well, there go those pesky consequences of my actions. So, Ian is a bit older now than he was in 2016. That is how time works after all. And he's realized that the things he's done need apologizing for. And as someone who the apology was actually intended for, I think he did a decent job. Aside from D'Angelo Wallace, I haven't really seen any black creators reacting to Ian's apology. Mostly because I've been avoiding it because his fans are, again, extremely normal. And although his video was pretty good, people who didn't like idubbbz before or just didn't care, maybe aren't going to have the same reaction to his apology that a fan would. I used to like his videos a lot. Like I said, I used to be a fan. I guess I'm still sorta an admirer. I watched Creator Clash both times, and I do want to go in person if it's held next year and still in Florida. The plane tickets weren't that expensive, actually. I distinctly remember being in a homeroom my senior year of high school and gleefully watching his Tanamojo takedown on my pink iPhone 5C. I love Kickstarter crap. I loved his unboxings. I don't think it's 100% necessary to prove how much of a fan I was for any of my opinions to matter, but I'm doing it anyway. I went to an all-black high school at the time, so I didn't really experience stock standard racism from my peers, just the usual internalized anti-blackness that everyone seemed to have. So Ian's videos didn't have the effect on me that a lot of people said it had on them, their peers openly using slurs against them and justifying it with, "Idubbbz said it's okay." It affected me in a different way. I internalized it. Like I said in the H3 segment of my anti-SJW phase video, I was fully under the assumption that racism had been solved and didn't exist anymore, and that words were just words, and my opinions were bolstered by these white creators, which is, you know, wrong. But like Ian, I grew up. I realized things. I learned. I'm still learning. I probably still have a lot to learn. But I learned these things because I had no choice but to. At the risk of repeating myself, I can't ignore racism because racism affects me. But apparently there are some people who can ignore racism, I guess. Yeah, I gotta talk about critikal. Before I even talk about the video itself, I just want to say how truly odd it was that critikal even felt the need to respond in the way he did. I watched him regularly for a few years, I think right after he started showing his face in videos, so I'm well acquainted with his style of commentary. He takes his situation and gives his thoughts on it without thinking about it too hard or scripting his videos. Which sounds like a diss, but I promise it isn't. I really liked his off-the-dome commentary because, for the most part, he seems level-headed in his opinions. I mean, most of the stuff he talks about doesn't really require that much deep thought anyway. And it wouldn't really have been out of the ordinary for critikal to talk about this. It was kind of a big deal in the YouTube space for Ian to finally acknowledge this, especially considering some of his peers, cough cough Ethan Klein, have yet to publicly acknowledge some of the maybe not hateful stuff they were spreading online in those days. So the fact that critikal covered it isn't really the odd part. It's what he said.
I feel like his perspective on it is very warped by the way the internet has evolved over the years. The way he talks about this content makes it sound like he used to fucking murder puppies for these videos, which it was never that extreme.
No, it was that extreme. I don't really know what to say to you if you don't think openly saying slurs isn't extreme, other than why? Why is that? Call in, we're standing by, I'd like to know. Also, I just hate how people treat the year 2016 like it was 1986. Yeah, it feels like a long time ago because we all collectively aged 5 years under COVID lockdowns, but it was just 7 years. In the grand scheme of things, not that long ago. It wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now.
But I don't think it was a mistake that he made those videos. Like, they're not hurtful, nor do I really think they're damaging. But at the end of the day, I don't think the goal of his content was ever to be hurtful or damaging. He was just trying to entertain and using edginess as shock humor, which for its time was acceptable online.
You know, I really hate to bring up the Ku Klux Klan here, but I'm gonna bring up the Ku Klux Klan here. We're gonna diverge for a history lesson, but I promise there is a point. Something that I don't think is common knowledge is exactly how the KKK rose to prominence in the early to mid 20th century. You probably already know that the Klan originated on Christmas Eve after the Civil War in 1865, with Nathan Bedford Forrest and his gang of failures traipsing around Tennessee, terrorizing recently freed black folks to keep them from exercising their freedom. What you probably didn't know is that it only lasted for roughly 7 years. In its first iteration, it was a disorganized mess and just ended up falling apart. What made the Klan as we know it today was a book. That book, titled The Klansman, a historic romance of the Ku Klux Klan, was one in a trilogy of revisionist history about the Civil War and Reconstruction, which demonized black people and lifted up the first iteration of the Klan as bastions of law and order. It was written by a total flop named Thomas Dixon, whose father was a Klansman during that time. The book, however, wasn't what did it though. A movie would become the new Klan's catalyst. You may have heard of it, it's called Birth of a Nation. Yeah, that was based on a book. It was essentially the first blockbuster. Loads of people were seated in the theaters to see it, and it was even screened at the White House by our good sis Woodrow Wilson. Embarrassing for him. Well, this one guy loved the movie so much, he was like, you know what? Let's bring that back. That man's name was William Joseph Simmons, and on Thanksgiving Eve, that man and some of his flop racist friends climbed a mountain in Georgia, you know, the one with one of the largest in situ carvings in the United States, Stone Mountain, and the Klan was reborn once more. In times when you're supposed to be around family and engaged in merriment, these guys were more focused on hating minorities. Couldn't be me. All of that is to say that Ian's videos were pure entertainment, but they ended up causing tangible harm. On a larger scale, The Klansman and Birth of a Nation were pure entertainment, but they ended up creating insurmountable generational trauma. You can't hand-wave that away, Charles. Is it an extreme example? Maybe, but apparently nuance is lost on some people, so I gotta go big to get my point across.
You shouldn't have to apologize for criticizing someone or something. Voicing your opinion on a subject is a totally natural thing to do. I get criticized, I criticize others, people criticize movies, games, music, all of that. And to try and vilify the idea of criticism being evil, I think is a little dangerous, because then you just create these echo chambers and no one ever really grows from that.
If Ian wants to apologize, let him. Why are we dictating who can apologize to whom and for what reason? That's such a weird thing to say when it is 100% not your place or your business.
I feel like the main pain point of those videos he used to make is the slurs in them. Like, his catchphrase was 2 slurs strung together, right? Like, that's not exactly something to be super proud of. I get that. But to go back and say, like, all of it's shit, all of it's, you know, bad and cruel, I think is going way overboard, because it's not. I don't think any of it was cruel. I don't think the criticism was unwarranted, but it's fine to just regret the way you handled it to a certain extent without saying all the content was damaging or cruel or bad.
This, among other things in this video, is, I think, what rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Let me say it nice and loud for the people in the back. How are you going to dictate what is harmful to a group of people you are not a part of? At the risk of making this joke a second time, it's time to be real. Critikal is not black, and as far as I know, not trans. How do you get to say what is or isn't harmful to those people? Quickly.
Because I never got the impression from those videos that he was morally grandstanding or that he was trying to pitch himself as superior to them morally.
Is there like an audio version of the phrase reading comprehension? Because I think our friend in Florida here lacks it. You don't have to say in outright bold letters that you think you're better than someone when you talk about them to convey that. It's all in the way you frame their words and actions. And yes, I do think Ian thought he was better than Leafy, or Tano, or Keemstar, or Rice Gum because he wasn't engaging in the tomfoolery they were. You might even argue that I think I'm better than Critikal because I don't lack listening comprehensions. And that's because I do. That's a joke, do not take me seriously. If I had to guess, I would say Ian probably feels so bad because, as the old saying goes, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Like, yeah, his content cop subjects have done some bad stuff, but that doesn't really necessitate stooping to their level. So, okay, this isn't a response video, so I won't inundate you all with more clips from Critikal's video. If you want to watch the whole thing, it is still, for some reason, on his channel. All in all, his video is embarrassing. That's the only word I can use to describe it. Listen, I get Ian and Charlie are, if not friends, then at least friendly. If your friend is down in the dumps for regrettable things they've done in the past, you probably want to comfort them as well. Let them know they aren't a terrible person and that you're still here for them. That's reasonable. But you would do it in private, especially when the thing they're apologizing for doing never affected you in the first place. Okay, so I sorta lied. I have one more clip.
You don't deserve to be fucking publicly flogged with tomatoes thrown at you for the rest of your life and skinned alive because you made edgy videos in 2016, man. It's just not that big of a deal. It feels horrible hearing this from him, knowing that it weighs so heavily on his mind that he made these videos, so he feels like he's a real piece of shit for doing it. You just made edgy YouTube videos. You didn't ruin anybody's life. You didn't create a fucking army of racists and bigots.
I think this is the crux of a lot of people's either willful or unwitting misunderstanding of this. It wasn't just edgy YouTube videos. Ian, whether he knew it or not, gave his audience carte blanche to act the way he did, and it didn't just stay online. As much as boomers like to say it isn't, the internet is, in fact, real life. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have mountains of evidence for why Instagram is causing teenage girls to develop eating disorders and self-harm. And we wouldn't have weirdo idubbbz fans yelling slurs at their classmates. This stuff has tangible effects, and to say it doesn't is both incorrect and irresponsible. I think Ian's apology is acceptable. It's very introspective, and as a person who is also very introspective, even before I started therapy, I can respect it. And as someone who was a fan and internalized a lot of things I shouldn't have from his content as well as others, I accept it. I actually gained a lot of respect for him for facing this head on. I am but one person though, not a monolith. If you are a fan of his and part of the groups that Ian is apologizing to, make yourself heard. After all, like the man said, his care starts and stops at us. And for the people like Charlie, stay out of black folks' business. Bestie, you ain't got nothing to do with this. This is an A and B conversation. Please see your way out. Before I go, Ian, I know you're trying to make amends, and to that I say, I accept Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, personal checks, money orders, traveler's checks, silver dollars, rolls of quarters, stock. That's gonna be it for me. Follow me on Twitter, read my Medium articles, and listen to my new podcast. It's really good, I like it a lot, and I think you will too. Now, if you don't mind me, I'm gonna go mind my business, because apparently that's a unique skill for some people.
What we do here is go back.
Big job.